today's video, and in today's video I'll be discussing why Ron DeSantis could potentially not be as strong of a suburban candidate as many people think he would be. Now, this is not for certain. We could easily see him be an insanely strong suburban candidate, but there's also a chance that we don't see him being as strong a suburban candidate, and I'll be explaining why. So first off, the first thing we've got to do is go look at the Florida exit polls. This is the 2018 gubernatorial exit polls. Andrew Gillum only lost the suburbs by 8%. DeSantis won them only by 8%. So not a strong victory there. We can look at Trump's performance in 2016, just 2 years prior. He won the suburbs by 10%. And then 2 years later, he won them by 11%. So Trump did overperform DeSantis. Now, one thing that we do have to keep in mind, however, is that it was a blue wave year. It wasn't as strong a blue wave year on the in Florida as the rest of the nation, but it was a blue wave nonetheless. We saw the Democrats flip 2 seats in Florida. They still lost. They still didn't have the majority of House seats in Florida. They had, I think, one less. I think it was, how many House seats? They had 27, so they had like 14, 13, I think it was. But the Democrats did flip 2 seats, which is still something. And then they also, but however, they did lose a gubernatorial seat. They did lose a Senate seat. This might have been because Rick Scott was so popular. I'm not 100% certain. However, it was a slight blue wave year, and DeSantis slightly underperformed Trump. So that's one major thing. It did vote like 10% to the rest of the country, 10% to the right of the rest of the country. However, Florida typically tends to do that. It doesn't necessarily go along with waves. It doesn't necessarily have wave years. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing is both were fairly strong suburban candidates, and this is where I'm getting to this with Harris. She is a very strong suburban candidate. I would say she is one of the Democrats' strongest suburban candidates. There are a lot of candidates that could be very strong for the suburbs. My mind just drawing a blank as I'm thinking right now, but there are candidates that could do well in the suburbs. And as I've discussed in a recent article I posted, Harris is more establishmentarian. She is fairly establishmentarian, and we typically see establishmentarian candidates do well in the suburbs. Now, this typically was for the GOP. However, as we're seeing national suburbs shifting to the left, that does more or less mean something, considering the fact that she is still an establishmentarian. I think she would actually be a very strong candidate for the evidence that he is, because he hasn't really ever done well in the suburbs. We saw in the 2018 gubernatorial election, we saw him lose Pinellas County. We saw him lose Duval County. We saw him lose Seminole County. We saw him lose a lot of suburban counties. Now, once again, this was a blue wave year, and that's one thing that a lot of people attribute this to. But we can't just assume that he's going to be a strong suburban candidate just because he seems like he would be one. Now, he definitely seems like he would be one, and that's definitely a major factor. If he seems like he's going to be a good candidate in the suburbs, and it appears that people in the suburbs would like him, there's a good chance that they will. But we can't necessarily just think of that because even his congressional district didn't really have suburbs in it. Anyways, going back to this though, assuming that he is even if he is a little bit stronger than Trump, that's the thing, like I've said, we have no clear evidence that he is an incredibly strong suburban candidate. However, let's just hypothetically say that he is. Kamala Harris is also a very strong suburban candidate. We saw when there were 2 strong suburban candidates, such as him versus Andrew Gillum, we saw him underperform Trump. Underperform him. Even if it was a blue wave year, we saw, even if we take out the blue wave, yada yada, it was probably about a similar margin to what we would see with, sorry, there's a thing in the top left-hand corner of my screen, and I can't close it at the moment. Give me a second, I'll try. I'm able to close it. Anyways, back to this. DeSantis is a strong suburban candidate, or for the most part. From what we've seen, we don't have a whole lot of evidence that he's a strong suburban candidate. However, people seem to think that he is. Against Gillum, another strong suburban candidate, even if it was a blue wave year, he underperformed. If you take out that blue wave or whatever, even though, he still was able to win it by narrow margins, yes, but even if it was a blue wave, he was still able to win the state, and that's just more evidence that it's more or less immune. But let's take out the blue wave. He probably wins it by similar margins to Trump, 10, 11, 12%, against another strong suburban candidate, meaning that against Kamala Harris, another very strong suburban candidate, he would probably be performing similarly. And that's why I think that he would lose Arizona. That's why I think that he would lose Georgia. I actually think Kamala Harris, especially with the help of Stacey Abrams, would be a strong candidate in Georgia. But we can talk about that later, maybe in another video. Going back, she would also win Michigan. Michigan suburbs are still red, and she probably has enough support in Detroit to do it. She would do horribly among white working class voters, like rural white working class voters, but she would have enough support in Detroit to be able to do it. We could even see her. I highly doubt it. We could even see her hanging on to Wisconsin just because the suburbs are so red. I highly doubt it. DeSantis will probably win it by a lean, maybe a likely if he does very well margin. I see it being a 2-3% DeSantis state, but she could do well enough in the suburbs. It would probably just get overridden by her weak performance among white working class voters. She'd probably still lose Pennsylvania because its suburbs are incredibly red and it's not like an incredibly liberal state. But she could still win. I doubt she'd win Pennsylvania, but she still possibly could. She'd probably still lose North Carolina because she's just a bad candidate for rural voters. But in Charlotte and its suburbs, and Raleigh and its suburbs, she would probably be able to overperform. She'd probably be able to do better than Biden would and maybe improve on his margins. Just because, like I said, DeSantis and Harris are both strong suburban candidates, and the two would probably cancel each other out, and it would essentially be a lot similar to what we saw in 2020. Now, I'm sorry guys, I know this was a short video, but I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and stay tuned for my next video, and I'll see you all there. Bye!